Hello artist! In this video I am going to show you how to draw and paint food. I took an online session with Charlie O'Shields a couple weeks ago where he walked us through step by step how to paint this cupcake, draw and paint it, and it was so much fun! So I had to continue making food. These ones I found in magazines, actually the recent Costco magazine, which turns out to be really great for food. So I hope that you either follow along with me on making your own kiwi, or that you find your own fruit or fun food in your house or in your own magazine and use the concepts that I'll teach you in this video.
On our paper, we will begin drawing the contour lines of the fruit or food. Contour lines are lines that define the edges or the outside of the shape. When finding the contour lines, trace your finger around the outside edge of the picture, or if it is a piece of fruit in front of you, or piece of food in front of you, trace your finger around the outside in the air. Once the outside is done, look for big shapes on the inside, then go to smaller shapes and smaller shapes. Eventually you can start adding details. This kiwi appears to be divided into sections, so I am lightly adding in those sections. When I was done, in this example, I outlined in black pen, so it was kind of like making my own coloring page. Artists don't always outline, but I decided to on this one. You could use colored pencils, crayons, or any other tool that you have available. I am using watercolor paint because I like the way that it looks, and it allows me to get really light values. Value is how light or dark something is. This kiwi has a lot of really light values. For example, the inside of the kiwi is a very light yellow, almost tan color. Always start with the very lightest value. When using watercolor paints, it's best to squeeze a little bit of clean water into each color before you start. Watercolor paints need water to be added to them. It's like waking them up. When using watercolor paints, I like to have 2 cups of water, one to rinse my dirty brush, and another cup to add clean water to my paint. To get the really light tan in the center of the kiwi, I add a lot of water and mix together some yellow and a little bit of brown. I test my colors on a blank part of my paper and then fill in the areas that need it. I am repeating this process for the green by mixing a really light green with lots of water, testing it on the edge of my paper, and then filling it in where it belongs. It will take many layers before this starts to look correct. I'm keeping it very light because a lot of the kiwi is actually light with just small amounts of bright color. The paint needs to dry between layers, otherwise one color or one value will bleed into the other. I use a blow dryer which I hold above the paper and swish around. Only use the blow dryer with adult supervision. Once you have the base layers of your kiwi, you can start adding details and accent colors. These are the darker colors. For example, I noticed bright green dots above the seeds. I am choosing to make these a little bit darker than my photograph for 2 reasons. 1, watercolor paints dry lighter. 2, I want this to be an interesting piece of art, so I can exaggerate it a little bit. You could be doing the same project with colored pencils or even crayons. Just start lighter and then go darker. I let my kiwi dry, and now again I'm adding even more value along the left side. When the top of the kiwi is done, I mix a brown, test on the edge of my paper, and put it on the outside of the kiwi when I like the color. Just as before, I am finding the very lightest value or color that I see on the kiwi. I will add darker paint on top of that when the lighter color is dry. To effortlessly create the texture of the kiwi, I sprinkle a little bit of salt over the skin. Now I am done with the kiwi and need to add a shadow so that it looks like it's on a table or a surface instead of floating. In this photograph, it looks like there are multiple light sources. So there's light casting a shadow off to the left, and there's also light casting a shadow towards the bottom. I make the shadow with black, but I also add a little bit of brown in the shadow as well because the reflection of the kiwi will make the shadow appear to be a little bit brown. To get an even, smooth shadow versus a streaky one, paint the area first with clean water, then paint on top of it with the color that you are making the shadow. On the left shadow, I did not paint it first with water, which is why it's a bit splotchy. On the right, it'll dry much more even. If the paint appears to be too saturated, you can also remove a little bit with a dry brush. The shadow will be just slightly darker along the base of the kiwi. And just like on the left shadow, there will be a little bit of brown for a reflection in the shadow. My kiwi seems almost perfect, but I'm going to let it dry and touch up a little bit with colored pencil. I'm using black to very carefully increase the value or darkness in just a couple areas, including the left rind of the kiwi and the bottom right shadow. I also darkened some of the greens and some of the brown. I chose to do these details with colored pencil instead of paint because I can get finer and more accurate with the pencil. The soft layering of the pencil also has a nice effect. I'm going to add just a little bit more green and some of the highlights with yellow. And that is it. I hope you have as much fun painting or drawing your own fruit or food as much as I did. Video by Tara Gary, music by @ixonofficial.